Okay, what we are going to do today for science, I kind of already mentioned it a little bit, but we are going to stick with talking about force and motion and how force affects motion and all about motion. But we're going to shift our focus a little bit to a new essential question. So we're moving past how can you tell whether something is moving, and we're going to jump into a new essential question that we should hear by the end of today's lesson. But we're going to go ahead and start with what's called our Page-Keeley probe, named after Paige Keeley, who introduced this as an idea to kind of get your brains rolling on something. So we're going to start there today. You do not need your notebooks open yet. We'll get to them together in just a moment. And we're going to start with, we'll just talk about it up here before we answer it. So this is the golf ball probe. This is just basically supposed to get our brains working towards two vocabulary words that we're going to have, which are balanced forces and unbalanced forces. Which two words are we working towards knowing?
Balanced forces and unbalanced forces.
My goal for you by the end of the next 5-6 days is to know what balanced and unbalanced forces are, be able to give examples of them as well, okay? So do you know them today? Probably not. Could you kind of start to figure it out maybe a little bit? Today, we have this guy up here. And what is he doing?
Golfing.
Golfing. So three friends are playing golf together. And they each have different ideas about the forces that act on a golf ball. This is what they think. So they're golfing. They each have different ideas. The first guy, Finn thinks forces act on the golf ball only when the golfer hits the ball. Pete thinks forces act on the golf ball only when the ball is on the tee. The tee being the little thing that sits on the ground.
Yeah.
And Tad thinks forces act on the golf ball when it is on the tee and when the golfer hits the ball. So I want you to be thinking as well. Who do you agree with? Do you agree with Finn that forces are only acting when you hit the ball? Do you agree with Pete that forces are only acting when the ball is on the tee, sitting there on the ground on the little tee? Or do you agree with Tad that forces act on the golf ball when it is on the tee and when the golfer hits the ball? I want you to take a moment. Who do you agree with? Take a moment. And before we share out, we're going to open up to page 20 and on Be a Scientist notebook. Which page?
20.
We're going to open up to page 20 in our Be a Scientist notebook, where you're going to see this exact same thing. You're going to see this exact same thing on page 20. If you see something else, you're probably looking at a different page. This exact same thing on page 20. And at the bottom it says, who has the best idea about force? So who do you agree with? Finn, Pete, or Tad? Write down their name. And then below it says, explain why you think that this is the best idea. I'm going to give you just a few moments to put who you agree with and explain. Just like we did in the last one, we will come back to this in a few days. But I'm only going to give you about 2 minutes to fill it out. Okay, if you agree with Finn, stand up. So most of you in the room agree with Finn that forces act on the ball only when the golfer hits the ball. Okay, let's hear from you. Ray, why do you agree with Finn?
I agree with Finn because if you hit the ball sometimes, it goes over the sand trap and into the water. And if you don't hit the ball, all it does is it sits in the tee on the ground.
Yeah, so she's saying if you hit the ball, it moves and it goes somewhere. And if you don't hit the ball, all it does is sit there. Great. Thank you for your explanation. Let's see. Kyler, why do you agree with Finn?
Because Tad and Pete really didn't explain how the ball moves. They just really kind of explained how it really didn't move.
So you're thinking about that movement with it as well. Okay, cool. Thank you. Go ahead and have a seat. I know there are more people share their answers. If you agree with Pete, stand up. The force is only in action when, perfect. So you think Pete's right, that force is only at work when the ball's on the tee. Explain your thinking. Okay. She thinks, yeah, Pete, because it has to do something with movement. Okay. Have a seat. And if you agree with Tad, stand up. Okay, Paula, why do you agree with Tad that it's in motion? There's force with when you hit the ball as well as when it's sitting on the tee.
I think Tad because when you hit the ball, it goes, and when the ball's on the tee, it sometimes falls off.
Okay, interesting. So you're thinking about still that movement piece, though, right? Okay, good. And what do you think, Emery? Why do you agree with Tad today?
When he hits the ball, it will go high, but if it's on the tee, it will just sit there.
Okay, so kind of different explanations, some different thinking in there. Good. We are going to come back to this at the end and see if our thinking changes or if it stays the same once we learn more about force and what force is. Go ahead and have a seat.